If you've been paying attention to podcast industry news lately, the big news for 2025 is that YouTube is now the most popular podcast consumption platform. And when it comes to Gen Z, those aged between 13 and 28 or 29, you might think that that trend would apply to them as well. Well, we did our own survey of Gen Z podcast fans, and we were surprised by the results. Here's what we found. This global survey found that amongst Gen Z podcast fans, 56% use Spotify, 21% use YouTube, and 10% use Apple Podcasts. So even though the rest of the world might be going more towards YouTube, at least amongst Gen Z podcast fans, those that are regularly listening or consuming podcasts, 56% prefer Spotify. The other big trend right now, I think driven by all this hype around YouTube, is video podcasting. And really when we're talking about video podcasting, we're mostly talking about doing some sort of talking head video like this and uploading those to YouTube. And people talking on camera with a microphone has been a popular format on YouTube. They now have a special podcasts area on the website and in their app. And it was popularized by Joe Rogan and Mel Robbins. Some really popular shows have this style of YouTube video. And that's driven a lot of podcasters to think, I've got to get into video. I'm missing the boat. If I don't get into video, I'll miss out on all this potential audience. But when it comes to our survey respondents, those aged 13 to 29 who are regularly consuming podcasts, most of them listen to audio only. And again, this is counter to the popular narrative right now, which is we've got to be doing video because everybody's doing video. That's what podcast consumers want. And it turns out, at least for these young fans, 76% primarily listen to audio, and again, mostly on Spotify. 18% have a mix of audio and video consumption, while only 6% are primarily watching their favorite podcasts on video. When the survey asked where Gen Zers are consuming podcasts, the majority are consuming at home on their phone or tablet. That was nearly 59%. Only about 12% are listening or consuming podcasts on the bus or transit, another 10% while walking or cycling, and 9% in the car. That could be a stage of life thing. A lot of Gen Zers aren't in the job market yet, might not be driving yet, might not have a commute where they're driving yet. But if you combine those three, almost 30% of Gen Zers are listening or consuming podcasts while they're in motion, while they're on the bus, walking or cycling, or in the car. The other thing that surprised me in the survey data was how popular fictional drama and horror shows were with this generation. Here were the top-ranked podcasts in the survey responses. Number 1 was Welcome to Night Vale. Number 2 was The Magnus Archives. Number 3, Malevolent. Number 4, The Magnus Protocol. And number 5, My Brother, and Me. So lots of fiction. And if you look at the other podcasts that were mentioned frequently, there's Rotten Mango, Acquired, Joe Rogan, Life in the World to Come, Wolf 359, The Daily, If Books Could Kill, So True, and Normal Gossip. We have a mix of talk shows, comedy, business shows. So Gen Zers are definitely consuming a wide variety of content, but those top shows tend to be fictional dramas or horrors. And I think that's interesting. If you're looking to build an audience amongst this younger generation, fiction shows, that's a good opportunity. And then as a bonus question, I asked, when you think of a popular podcaster, which names come to mind? Joe Rogan was the number 1 by a wide margin with 28 mentions. Alex Cooper, Theo Vaughn, both had 5 mentions. So even though Joe Rogan wasn't their favorite show, the most popular show amongst Gen Z, they definitely think of him as the kind of preeminent example of a popular podcaster. So what does this mean for podcasters? Well, the number one thing is that audio isn't dead. Audio podcasting is not going anywhere. And I think this generation is showing that a lot of folks treat their audio listening, and especially their audio podcast listening, very different from their YouTube consumption. Audio podcasting is something that they do when they're doing chores, doing the dishes, maybe doing homework, maybe going for a walk on the bus. It has its own mode. And YouTube is just a different mode. It's a different kind of content you're looking for. You might be more passive in just letting the algorithm recommend shows for you, where audio podcasting is where you go to find those shows that you really enjoy. In this case, these fictional shows that they really like. And they've carved out space in their life for listening to audio in this way. I think we can also see how much Spotify captured this generation. When they launched their free plan in 2008, it was kind of perfectly timed with these kids that were in junior high and high school and college who are looking for a free way to stream music. And they've now built up a habit of listening to audio on Spotify. Spotify has really captured this generation. And then in a lot of ways, Spotify did podcasting a great service when they popularized the form on their platform, because now it has introduced podcasting to this whole new generation, and they really prefer to consume those podcasts in Spotify. So Spotify has done a great job, I think, of growing the overall podcast audience, especially with that younger generation. I think another takeaway for a lot of these shows is you might be missing out on Gen Z and reaching Gen Z with your show. So if you have a fiction podcast, you should definitely be figuring out how to reach this demographic. That could mean hanging out on Reddit in the Gen Z subreddit. It could mean promoting your podcast on Spotify or YouTube. It could mean getting on some of these lists like best fiction podcasts for Gen Z. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and not every fiction podcast is taking advantage of those opportunities. It could mean advertising your podcast on Instagram Reels or TikTok. And the other opportunity is for there to be Gen Z podcast networks that really curate shows in a particular genre for Gen Z listeners. And this could mean, like I said, fiction shows, but it could also mean nonfiction shows, talk shows, shows about career and business. This generation is now in their late 20s. And, they are fully into their career, many of them. And there's an opportunity to meet them where they're at in this kind of uncertain time where they don't know if they're going to be able to afford a house, if groceries are expensive, rent is expensive, career options are limited. I think there's a lot of Gen Zers that are looking for guidance, and podcasts could be that friend, that older mentor that help them work through this stage of their life. If you'd like to see the full report, the link is in the show notes. I've also linked to my survey methodology and all of the raw data so you can take a look at it. And I'd like for you to comment below about what you think about all of this. What does this mean for you as a podcaster, as a podcast listener, as a podcast industry participant? What are some of your thoughts around these surprising results that Gen Z actually prefers audio podcasts and prefers Spotify over YouTube and Apple Podcasts? Leave a comment below. I'd love to get some discussion going. And if you're looking to start a podcast, whether you are a Gen Z podcaster or someone looking to reach Gen Z, you should check out transistor.fm podcast hosting. You can try us free for 14 days. Just go to transistor.fm and click on that free trial button.